this is Chris, and you're about to listen to the second part of our chat with Nathan Marchand about the outstanding Gamera Heisei Trilogy. Hope you enjoy, and God bless, my friends.
So the first note I have
absolutely.
here, and I think afterward I need to introduce you to Reverend Mifune, who is the Monster Island chaplain. I think you two would get along quite well. In fact, I told him about your show, and I think he started listening. So he
sounds like an interesting chap as you were describing him to Beck. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to meet this gentleman.
Yeah, he's not related to Toshiro Mifune, but Toshiro Mifune is his favorite actor. So
there we go.
And he's one of those rare Japanese Christians, so that's kind of a big deal. So anyway, the first thing I have on here is just a little point for us to talk about a little bit is Gamera comes from the sea, like a lot of kaiju, because Japan is an island nation. The ocean is a huge part of Japanese culture. Because, and I can't take full credit for this. I have to give a shout out to the Kaiju Apostle a little bit about this, because they brought this up actually in one of their episodes for an unrelated movie. But the ocean, it traditionally, in pretty much all cultures, especially the cultures like say England, island nation, a lot of seafaring cultures, the ocean represents the unknown. It represents chaos. And that is actually imagery that you'll see in the Psalms in particular. It's used in the Bible a lot. They talk about how the sea is the unknown and it's chaotic and it's unknowable, but God is in command of all of it.
Yep.
And so in this case, like I said, Gamera comes from the sea, and a lot of kaiju come from the sea because it's representative of that. This vast unknown, this chaos. And they come out of that.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry. I'm replaying the beginning in my head, actually. Just Gamera showing up. And I'm also thinking of how that lends itself to the other main franchise where Godzilla always emerges from the sea.
Yeah, well, and it's not just
where
them.
He emerged on land.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not just them. Why do you think sea monsters are such a common thing throughout?
Oh yeah.
The folklore and mythology of for most of civilization. I mean, that's because that's what the ocean was.
Oh yeah, and heck, we're all still terrified of the ocean. We've seen Jaws enough times.
Well, yeah, but there's a little bit of a Lovecraftian, I think, fear of that because it's so huge. You feel small.
Oh yeah,
by comparison.
Well, we feel small. It's huge. We know not everything in there's been found.
Yeah.
So there's room for that fantastical thing, which you'd be like, no monster could just show up on land, or it would take a lot of explanation. You could write it off.
Yeah.
But if it's coming from the sea, you could be like, all right, I can buy this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, unless you have some more to say about that, I can go to my next point.
Sure, please.
Okay, my next talking point. Atlantis. This one actually kind of applies to all three of the movies, but I did some digging a little bit on Atlantis, because Atlantis is something that we've all heard. It pervades culture and history, and there's a lot of pop culture references to Atlantis. Aquaman, Namor, Stargate. Stargate had Atlantis. It's all over the place. It's this ubiquitous thing. And in this, the origin of Gamera is that he was built by Atlantis. He was created by Atlantis because they made the Gauss in the first movie. The Gauss, if I remember correctly, I think the Gauss were a bioweapon of some kind, and then they got out of hand, so the Atlanteans made Gamera to deal with the Gauss.
I think that's... you're...
I could be misremembering that. Jimmy can yell at me later about it.
There's something else I'm thinking about, but I've also... It could just be getting tied up into some of the other stuff I've been listening to a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely think...
But what's interesting about that is that...
create them, but then...
Yeah. But what's interesting is they built Gamera to do this, but they created Gamera to do this, but it was too late. their civilization fell thanks to the Gauss. So,
Yep.
And I find that interesting. So they were undone by their own hubris. Is really what it was. That is a story of hubris. And I actually looked into it. Again, I would have, I don't have all the details here, but that actually is pretty much the story of Atlantis, even in mythology. I found out that Atlantis actually first appears in the writings of Plato, and it was a naval power that besieges Athens, and then the Athenians repel them. Unlike the rest of the world, like they took out every other country and city that they went after, but the Athenians beat them. And then Atlantis loses favor with the gods and sinks as a result.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah. Because I just had to look at this, like, we talk about Atlantis a lot in this trilogy. So I looked at it. So they had took that story and adapted it. It's still another story of hubris.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating.
That added such a cool layer, especially as they keep going to that well, especially in the third.
Yeah.
Where it's not just like, okay, it's a monster, and then here's this other monster here to save the day. It, like, there's still that part, but there's added depth to it that they keep going to the well and adding to, which, again, is one of the testaments to strength out of these movies. Because it's not even like they so many times in trilogies or other movies where it's like, hey, we give you the origin, but then here's this part you didn't know that's a borderline retcon, where it's like, this feels organic, like it was planned from the get-go.
Yeah.
I know I'm jumping ahead to the third, so I'm going to try not to.
And we can we can talk about that because we're talking about Atlantis, because you find out in the third one, they expand on that idea, and you find out that the Gamera we see was just the latest one. They tried multiple times. I think they even called them betas. Even because the beginning of that movie is they call it a Gamera graveyard. So there's all of these desiccated Gamera bodies, and you find out later that what it was the Atlanteans had to try multiple times to make a Gamera that worked, and they discarded all the rest of them until they got the Gamera that they thought that worked, but it was too late for them. I just find it interesting. So it's they make the Gauss in their hubris, and then they try to fix their own problem, and it's too late.
Yeah.
And it's a classic story. It is a classic story of the tragic hero. In this case, it's being applied. It's the backstory for an entire civilization. But let's be honest, that is a universal theme. We all understand that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's one that lends itself, especially when you're getting to the add-ons of like the last of its kind. When we got there, or you found out later in the movie, the beta testing part. But it's just kind of like, that just adds so much to it, where it's, okay, it presumably had a people, and it's just trying, and it's doing what it was supposed to do, just too late for the originals.
Yeah. And what makes it interesting is you find out that the way that the Atlanteans made Gamera work is they put in, this was part of their mythology, although there is some non-mythological elements that go along with this. Is very Eastern. There's apparently an energy, not the force, but an energy that is the life force of the earth. It's called mana, not manna from heaven, mana. And they infused it into Gamera to give him life. And he can, as we see in Gamera 2, he can weaponize it if he has to.
Yeah.
But there's dire consequences for that. And the reason why the Gauss keep showing up is because they're showing up because the Earth's mana is being depleted. And so it's being depleted because of the actions of mankind. So the idea in this trilogy is the Atlantis was undone by its hubris, and now humanity is going down a similar path, and they need to stop. and they're suffering the consequences of it with the Gauss, and Gamera is still trying to fix it, but it's too much.
Oh, yeah. What's also interesting with that, and we can dive into it more when we get to the third, is in the first two movies, what they really do a great job with is the link Gamera has to humanity through the priestess. And then when we get to the second one, when he does that the mana attack, he loses that connection.
Yeah.
And then we get to Iris, and Gamera looks rugged. It's a whole new suit, but I love that suit. But it also does symbolize...
They had two suits for that one because they had Nightmare Gamera that appears for 10 seconds.
Yeah. The fantastic part of that is he's lost his connection to humanity, where he's still about saving the world, but especially in the first couple minutes, because he's gone off into the wilderness almost, he's lost that connection.
Yeah.
He now doesn't care as much about like the people aspect, which this trilogy never did the friend of all children thing. But
no, the closest that we get to that, as if MST3K popularized this term, the Kenny.
Yeah,
the Kenny, which is applied to any kid character who appears in a kaiju movie, not just Gamera. And the closest we get to that is Asagi. But I think that was Kaneko looking at that trope and thinking, how can I take that idea but approach it from a more mature, a more grown-up perspective? And it was, let's make the Kenny a teenage girl. So it's still kind of a kid, but she's older, she's more mature, and you can have that connection, but the connection makes sense as opposed to it just being completely inexplicable. In the original movies.
And they did it so well with that other kaiju films that have done stuff where monsters have had connections with human characters, it's few and far between that it works fully. Or it's not uncomfortable and awkward. Yeah. Look at some Kong films.
Kong 76, man. As Jimmy said on that episode, he can attest to the sliminess of the 70s.
But this it worked, and it's testament to the performer, the actress, but also the writing, where there wasn't any time where it was just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like they did enough adding to it and then explaining it, especially as the films went on.
Yeah.
That even as you're watching, you see her feeling Gamera, but then especially when we get to the third one, right at the start, you're like, oh man.
Yeah, it's
like,
not at that point, it's not a direct
influence.
connection. It's not a direct connection anymore by then, because, and that's actually my next point that we'll get into, but that bead that she has, it shatters at the end of Gamera 2, but so at that point, she still seems to have a connection with Gamera, but it's more intuitive, I guess you could say. It's more of I think he's going to do this, but I don't know for sure. So it's more like faith at that point.
Yeah.
She had this direct connection for a long time. She could feel Gamera. Exactly. She could hear what he's thinking. Then she loses that direct connection, and then it's more about faith. And that's actually kind of a fantastic idea. And it's my understanding, I have, even now here on Monster Island, I still have a little bit of a limited understanding of this, but my understanding is that the concept of faith is, at least in terms of the Japanese language, is a very odd concept. It's difficult to translate because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, not only within the Japanese language, but also within Japanese culture as well.
Right.
And so that I find that fascinating. And, I was thinking about this watching this trilogy in preparation for this. Asagi keeps getting called a priestess, but I actually thought, what might be a better way a better term to describe what she does. Not so much priestess, more like prophetess. Let's be honest.
Ooh.
She's kind of like, what is she doing? I mean, she's kind of like an Old Testament prophet if you stop and think about it. What is she doing? She is putting forth what Gamera is doing, what Gamera has told her. She's telling everybody else what he's doing. The military, the SDF, all of them, they want to kill him, even though he's trying to help them out. But they're not listening. They will not listen. They still perceive Gamera as a threat. What is she doing? She's telling everybody, no, this is what Gamera is doing. So she is putting forth. She's prophesying, I guess you could say, in a way.
Well, I was going to say she's reminded me a bit of the apostles.
Mm-hmm.
Just basically to riff on what you were saying. Just
please do that. I bring that up. This is meant to be a discussion starter.
I definitely think that's accurate, especially again in the third one, where when we meet Gamera in that third one, he is changed. He's a lot more rugged. It's the singular focus. Where in other stuff, he in the other two, he seemed to care more about the widespread destruction. He was a little more precise. But as Iris is growing and as the military is like, we got to take this down, like everything else be danged, she's like, no, he is good. I know he is good. He still wants to save us. Like, she's standing up for him. She's standing up for him at no worry for herself. She's delivering. She's not equating at all Gamera with Jesus, but the similarity of she is, even though there's a question about him and whether or not he's still good, she is very much like, no, he's here to save us. This is the evil. He will stop it. And then Gamera shows that in Iris.
Yeah. You say you don't want to equate Gamera with Jesus, but when we get to Gamera 2, I think there are parallels to be drawn.
Oh, they lean on it.
They do. But speaking of
my comfort level,
But speaking of that, my next point was actually the bead that she has. The subtitles that are available for this if you pay attention to the Japanese being spoken, you'll hear it. But it just gets translated as comma-shaped bead. It's actually called a magatama, which you can hear in the Japanese. That is a very specific thing. I looked this up. They're jewels. They're said they could be to date back all the way to about 1000 BC in Japan. And they were originally decorative, but as time went on, they actually took on religious significance. Which explains a lot in this movie. I don't know if you heard episode 13 of my show where I talked about the three treasures. I talked a bit about the magatama and some of these things. But there's a couple of books that are some of the earliest bits of Japanese history and mythology. They're called the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. And a lot of what we know about Japanese mythology comes from that. The magatama are actually mentioned in those books. Specifically, there's the myth of Susanoo. I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways. The storm god. He got 500 of them from a jewel-making deity, and then he gave them to his sister. You may know this name if you've played enough video games. Amaterasu.
I don't know it.
Oh, okay. Well, there was a sort of popular game called Amaterasu. It wasn't called Amaterasu. That's the name of the character in it. It's I'm blanking on it. I'm horrible. Oh, shut up and stop agreeing with me when I say stuff like that. It'll come to me randomly. I guarantee you. Oh, Okami! That's right. See, it did come to me randomly. Okami. The game Okami. The main character's name is Amaterasu. Amaterasu was a sun goddess in Japanese mythology. And so her brother, the storm god, gave her these magatama, and she bit them off, and then blew them into the wind, and they created more deities. And then there's one famous story where Amaterasu shut herself in a cave, and because she's the sun goddess, by shutting herself up in the cave, it brought darkness to the world. So they hung Magatama in a 500-branch tree, so there's 500 of them, I guess, to lure her out of her cave. Also, and this was what I talked about a bit more in that episode, have you ever heard of the 3 sacred treasures of Japan?
No, I haven't.
Okay. They're like the crown jewels, except crazy mythological. And one of them is the Yasakani no Magatama, which is this very important and sacred, kama-shaped jewel that's been around for many, many centuries. Also, Noro priestesses in Okinawa wear necklaces made out of Magatama. And if you listen, I did an episode of Kaiju Vision Radio where I talked about Noro priestesses because it's part of the native religion of Okinawa. Because at one point, before the mainland took them over, the Okinawa was part of its own kingdom. They had their own culture and everything. So the fact that they have these in here, the fact that they have that her connection to Gamera is through a Magatama, there's a lot of significance that I will tell you right now, just with the handful of notes I have. I still probably am only scratching the surface as to the full meaning of all of it, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. Like this trilogy did not shy away from heavy themes and diving deep.
Yeah.
And throwing stuff in that I like. A lot of it, some of this stuff as you're describing, I was like, I did not get that, but it's not what works for the film is, even if you don't get that, it doesn't work against the film.
It doesn't.
So the more you know, the more it appeals, like the more it's like, oh, dang.
Yeah.
But it's not to the detriment of somebody.
No. And I have this under Guardian of the Universe only because, for what I understand, Gamera, even back in the 60s, was inspired by this, but they really make it a thing, particularly when you get to the third movie. But the whole thing about the 4 Guardians, and one of them is the Black Tortoise, that is from Chinese mythology. It's derived from Chinese mythology.
Yep.
That is a real thing. The first time I saw Gamera 3, I was confused by it. I thought that was fantasy. No, it is actual Chinese mythology thing that seeped into Japan. So the actual black tortoise that they talk about as one of those 4 symbols, it's because they're constellations. That black tortoise is called Genbu in Japan. And it's symbolized by a turtle entwined with a snake. And that guardian is often also called the Black Warrior, and it represents the north and winter, because the 4 guardians are the 4 principal directions, which they talk about a bit more in the third one. Right, yeah, and they use 2 of the guardians because Iris is loosely based on one of the bird. The bird. Yeah. And they have a lot of significance. I'm kind of looking at this. They're connected with like I said, the principal directions. They're connected with colors. That's why it's the black tortoise. There's also a white tiger. Ooh, some Power Ranger stuff there for you. And the azure dragon, the vermilion bird. In China, they're connected to the 5 elements, so wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And there's a lot of significance to them. Sorry, as soon as anybody says the elements, I'm automatically in the Avatar: The Last Avatar, yeah. Except those are that's the Greek understanding of the elements. Just gotta focus on Gamera, on or the band. There's also the band, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah. Nah, even then I'm like, nope, I skipped Avatar. Yeah, go for it, man. I'm not surprised. But in Japan, these 4 guardians are supposed to be the guardian spirits of Kyoto. Right. And the Black Tortoise protects the city to the north. In fact, there's a shrine, the Kenkun Shrine, at the top of Mount, again, forgive me if I say these wrong, Mount Funaoka in Kyoto is dedicated to the Black Tortoise. And this I thought was interesting. This was interesting there's a Chinese god that has close connections to the black tortoise. Again, my pronunciation. I think it's Zhuan Wu. Then he had a turtle and a snake general with him. He actually appears in Journey to the West. But here's the thing, and I thought this was a relevant story. There's a few notes I have that tie with that, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to skip to what I think is the most interesting in connection to the movie. There are Chinese legends about Zhuan Wu, who was the king to the north, who, depending on the story, because there's a couple different ones, as usually happens with mythology, the stories get retold in different places and and all that, so they're a little different. This sounds a little bit gross, but I think it's relevant to, like I said, to these movies. One story says he removed his own intestines to have them replaced with divine ones so he could achieve enlightenment and divinity. Another story, this one I think is actually a lot more interesting. Another story says that he went to a river and washed purged the sin in the river from his intestines. Washed them in the river. And then and then in the former story, his old intestines became the tortoise and the snake. And in the other one, so I think this is more interesting, the dissolved sins were like a black ichor in the river, and they formed into the tortoise and the snake. And then, in both versions of the story, he subdues both of them because they go terrorizing the countryside. But he doesn't kill them because they showed remorse, and then they became his generals for all of his adventures.
What? That's... What?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. But this is in connection to the whole black tortoise that they bring up in this movie. So this, they don't bring it up directly, but this is included in the baggage, I guess you could say. And I find the one about him washing out, purging his sins in the river to be the most interesting one, because what have we been talking about? Gamera was made as part of the hubris of Atlantis. He was made to deal with their hubris.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I just find it fascinating, the idea of, if you want to look at it from a Christian perspective, this guy is trying to cleanse his own sin. And then what happens is the sin collects and becomes a monster. Two monsters, in fact, that he must then contend with.
Which I think we can get, that theme gets explored a bit in the third one.
Oh, yeah. One of the big themes in the third movie is consequences. Major consequences.
Oh, yeah.
But I should have brought this up earlier, but I have this note in here. The whole thing with the relationship that Asagi has with Gamera. Our friends over at Geek Devotions, as per my recommendation, because I told them they should do this, because they said we're gonna do a devotional during I Heart Japanese Monsters Month on Gamera. And I said, okay, which one are you doing? I said, we're going to do the original movie. Like, no.
Oh, my God. Don't.
You watch Guardian of the Universe.
Go bang on the door.
You watch Guardian of the Universe. I don't care what you have to do. You watch Guardian of the Universe. So they did their devotional on Guardian of the Universe.
Yeah,
and the theme of their devotion with that, which surprised me. I was not expecting them to go in this direction. It was about suffering with Christ. And I watched it a little bit again just to get the Bible reference that they used. So remember, what happens throughout this movie is Asagi has her connection with Gamera, but when Gamera gets hurt, she gets hurt. He gets cut on his face. She gets caught on her face. Gauss uses her laser breath on his hand. Her hand bleeds a lot.
Right.
Gamera bleeds a lot, in case you haven't noticed.
Well, I was gonna say, that's in theme with the Showa ones, because what I remember loosely about them, even though I haven't seen them, but based on Up from the Depths, they were the franchise that started adding gore.
Oh,
a bit. Like
they did.
Godzilla didn't really do gore.
Not until 1972. Fun fact: the first monster to ever make Godzilla bleed was Gigan. They're still not getting along because of that. I see that, and all I keep thinking of is that scene in Iron Man 2 when Tony confronts Whiplash and he starts going on about if you could make gold bleed, and I keep thinking if you could make Godzilla bleed. But anyway, the verse that our friends at Geek Devotions used when they were talking about this was actually 1 Peter 4:12 and 13. I'll read it for you. We'll get a little spiritual here.
You.
It'll make Reverend Mifune very happy. Beloved, I'm reading from the NESB in case anyone cares. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory you may rejoice with exultation. Does that not describe Asagi and Guardian of the Universe?
Accurate. As the kids say, no, I'm not going to do it. would undercut the great sentiment that was just done. Listen here, folks. Don't quote the children. Or the teens, the young ones, the young
Gen Z, the generation under us.
No, that's so accurate.
Which, like I said, I mean, I think that makes sense when you look at her development over the course of these three movies. She loses the direct connection, and then it's about faith with her.
Oh yeah, well, and that's something that's as we're talking about this, I'm realizing with the three films, they do get more towards the faith aspect, which is interesting. Just because when you look at them in isolation, the first one is, I don't even want to say sci-fi or anything, but you could be like, okay, it's two monsters. They're of this world. The second film, it's something from space, so a little bit more sci-fi-ish.
Oh my gosh!
Then the third
Legion, Legion is.
Demon. Oh yeah,
Legion is in a fantastic. Let's just dive into that right now. Let's just go to.
Yeah, no, let's.
I don't. Well, again,
I was going to say
Advent of Legion. Go. It should be Advent of Legion because it makes so much more sense with the themes that it's playing around with. So much more sense because what is Advent? It is the appearing. That's what, if I remember correctly, that's what Advent means. So when we celebrate Advent at Christmas, it is the appearing, the coming. But so not only do you have that language, that word that denotes that, the monster in that gets its name from the Bible. They quote it. They quote it directly. Specifically, they use Mark 5:9. So we're talking about the Gerasene demoniac, which is in all of these. I don't know if you're familiar with this term. I went to a Christian university, so I had to take Bible and theology classes to graduate.
You're about to drop synoptic gospels.
Yes, synoptic gospels, because it is. You done saw it coming. The synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That story is in all three of them. It is in all three of them. The famous story where Jesus is confronted by a demoniac, and he says, like, if you come to destroy us and all of that sort of stuff, and Jesus asks the demon his name, and he says, we are legion, for we are many. And that gets quoted. Like I said, that's in all three of the synoptic gospels. Mark 5:9 is specifically quoted in this movie, because there are soldiers that see, because what Legion is a bunch of smaller creatures from space. They look like horrific insects, and they all combine together into one massive entity.
Yep.
So one of them quotes this. I'm like, where did this even come from? I was just like, it's a Bible reference. I have been told that for a lot of Japanese creators, they look at things like the Bible and just think it's a really cool source of things that they can use in their stories. They aren't necessarily intending it to mean anything profound. But let's be honest, it's a little hard to not use the Bible and in some way and not do something profound with it. So this is, if you want to look at it this way, you want to talk about Christological parallels. We have the threat of the week is the Legion, and Gamera is battling it.
Yep. So, couple quick things I want to point out about the watch along I had. Maybe not theme related, but just little things I noticed. I loved the first movie, but I found this one was. You and I talked earlier about how they keep getting better. This one, I think, as much as I enjoy Guardian, was leaps and bounds better in the sense of there's a couple shots where we get Gamera flying, but he's got the new almost like wing flippers.
Yeah, they turn into flippers. Because that was so he could use them like an airplane.
Yeah. To throw out wrestling terminology, I marked out when I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, this is what I wanted. Just the spinning shell, I get it, but I was like, this, oh my gosh, yes, this. And then we get that even more in the next one. As much as I liked Gyaos in the preceding movie, the costumes were all right. I'm not knocking them, but Legion is
is a feat of tokusatsu filmmaking. It really is. It took 2 men to operate that suit. 2.
Yeah, just so you could get it without the strings and everything. Like, it's not to the detriment of Gyaos. I'm not trying to knock Gyaos, but when you get to that, when you see it from that technical side, but then also the deep themes, you're just like, I graduated. I went from and I'm not trying to knock it, not trying to say the first one's the kiddie pool, clearly not, but I'm getting to the deep end, like, holy cow, this is nuts. In terms of the themes as we're discussing, but then also just visually and some of the stuff you get, the step up in every possible delivery is just it's outstanding.
Yeah, it really is, and a lot of people will argue between 2 and 3 as the best of the trilogy. I'm in the Gamera 3 camp, but I wish I've made plain. But I mean, like in this one, like I said, it's thematically rich. I don't think the characters are written as well, but it is the special effects and the themes and everything just get cranked up as you go. So it more than me. I hate to say it because characters and story are incredibly important to me with everything, but it does a very good job of making up for it. In fact, my most recent viewing of it, I actually found myself liking 2 a lot more than I remember the last time. But not only do you have the thing with Legion and them quoting the Bible about it, I kind of wondered if there are intentional, Christian imagery and ideas in this. You could argue Gamera has a bit of a death and resurrection. I mean, he dies. Yeah. He essentially dies fighting Legion the first time because that's how Gamera rolls. He gets his butt kicked the first time. This goes all the way back to the 60s. He gets his butt kicked the first time, and then he comes back and is like, "Ha-ha, I know your tricks." And then he wins. So
he takes the licking to learn.
Yeah. So he essentially dies. He gets encased, and I don't know what that was, but he kind of turns to stone almost. He just ceases to function.
Yeah.
He ceases to function. And, because of this massive attack from Legion. And then Legion continues on. And then it takes... Then what happens later? You have Asagi still acting as his priestess, prophetess, whatever you want to call her. And she keeps... she's still being that link. She's telling everybody he's fine. He's not going to hurt anybody. And she pleads, his case. And even kind of proclaims, in a way, she proclaims, he will rise again. He's coming back. He's going to be fine. He's coming back. And there's even a scene while that's going on where this mother is talking to her worried little daughter because she's wanting to know what's going on with Gamera. And what does she say to her mother? What does the mother say? Oh, he's just sleeping. He's just sleeping. Like she's trying to reassure her. He'll be okay. It'll be fine, even though she doesn't really know. And then, there's a whole crowd that sees Gamera when he emerges from this stony state. But what does the camera focus on so that we as the audience who we see our two main female leads?
Yep.
And who were the first people who saw the empty tomb?
The Marys.
The Marys. It was women. Women saw the empty tomb first.
Yep.
I mean, it's... You can go nuts with this. You really can.
There's too much there for it to not be on purpose. Maybe they're definitely like taking inspiration from that. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Whether or not the themes, to the extent that you and I can look into them and take from and see, maybe that was slightly different, but there's too much there where it's like, nah, man, there's way too many coincidences here for it to be a coincidence.
Yeah. I mean, I even wrote down, when Gamera is fighting Legion, and he whips out, because, my gosh, Legion keeps inventing superpowers. He's like Silver Age Superman. But he's like, oh, I have a new trick. And one of them was like those weird energy whip things. And I'm like, is this like Christ being whipped 40 minus 1? And,
right.
Things like that, where Gamera's getting whipped. He's suffering to save mankind. All these things.
Well, and
this weird idea just occurred to me. We talked about already how the Magatama bead that Asagi has shatters when Gamera emerges from his stony state. Even cuts her hand. I don't know if that was her hand getting cut or if it was just red liquid. It looked. I looked at it as blood, like it pierced her hand, and when it exploded and it cut her hand. This weird thought occurred to me, because we've already talked about how her relationship with Gamera becomes more faith-based after this movie, in the third movie. Is this like the veil being torn in two and how it changed everything? Whereas the Old Testament prophets had these very direct communications with God, an audible voice and all of that sort of stuff. But in the New Testament, it's more... The New Testament and beyond, past the early church age, it's more about faith.
Yeah, maybe that's interesting.
I'm just kind of sitting here I'm going to leave this right here. Jimmy's shaking his head at me a little bit. He's an engineer. He's a scientist. He kind of tolerates my Christianity a little bit, but despite how we badger each other on the air, we do actually have tremendous respect for one another. So,
well, I was going to say you've said the jest is in love, so there you go, right?
To continue the Star Wars analogy, we're like R2-D2 and C-3PO a little bit.
Which hopefully keeps to Star Wars and doesn't extend to out of Star Wars, where the actors did not get along well.
Well, I'm talking about the characters. So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm just going to leave that right there. If that was the case, I'm sure it was completely unintentional on the filmmaker's part.
But it's interesting, and I think that's worthy of some thought. Oh man, that's. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. And now let's get to the crescendo, because we've breezed through.
Yes.
There's a few other things I could mention about Advent of Legion, but I'll save those for my show because I want to try to stay on track here a little bit. We get to Revenge of Iris. Oh my goodness.
Gosh. Yeah. So.
Oh my goodness.
So when I sat down to watch this, I was like, okay, don't let your hopes up be too high. Like, just okay. If it can be even as good as half as good as the first one, I'm gonna be happy, because it's rare. It's so rare that a trilogy keeps getting better, but especially for the third one to stick the landing, it's a lot more difficult than you think. So I was like, okay, I know it's got a rep, but I'm still gonna just taper my expectations. They were shattered within the first, like 10 to 15 minutes. I was like, oh my gosh, this is outstanding. Like, you're gonna have to try to screw this up. Like, everything's firing on all cylinders.
Oh,
and that's even before we
my
get
gosh!
to the meat
You know
and
what's
potatoes.
if let's talk about the production here a little bit. And this was true to lesser extents with the previous two. There's out of these three, this one has the most CGI in it, and I will say that it's could be argued that the special effects get brought down a little bit by the CGI because the CGI hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
It looks dated, but it's meant they only used it when they had to and preferred using traditional tokusatsu effects. And here's the insane thing. The traditional tokusatsu effects, the practical stuff, still looks amazing. It has aged like a fine wine to the point where it makes the CGI look worse by comparison.
Yeah.
That looks like old cracked leather, by comparison. I know it's shut up, Jimmy. I know that wine and leather don't go together, but shut up. I saw you reaching for that button. The corner of my eye. I've got my eyes on you, man. But
He's been waiting. He's been waiting for a while.
He's like, I've been a little too quiet right now. He's a little antsy because he hasn't been piping in quite as much the last couple of episodes. I think he's a little upset. Shut up! You took over my show April 1st. Just, I'm not gonna let you forget that, man. Don't talk to me about Space Kong.
Interesting episode.
Yeah.
Jimmy, if you can make Mecha Mothra happen, you can take an episode of my show. But yeah, that's the caveat. Give me Mecha Mothra.
Yeah, I know. You have to finish Mechanicon first. Okay. Fixing Mechanicon. But anyway, the practical effects in this, they're 20 years old. They are absolutely fantastic. The composites are perfect. It is. Oh my gosh! Just look at the scene. Just look at the scene where Gamera tackles Legion into the train station, and the characters are in the foreground and they are reacting to it. That is technical perfection.
It is. So many
I was like, it is. It looks seamless. It is so freaking seamless. I don't know how they did it. There is a reason why David from the Kaiju Apostle actually said, we don't deserve this trilogy. Somebody posted that clip on Twitter, and his comment was, we don't deserve this trilogy. Like, it is.
Yeah. No, when I was watching it, the word beautiful came to mind so many times that I lost count, where it's just like, this is gorgeous. It doesn't matter whether it was supposed to look gorgeous or not. It was like, that word was coming to mind at tragic scenes.
I know, that's the thing. It is if it is possible to be beautiful and horrific at the same time, as this film often is. This is it.
Few other films have pulled it off.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, in the pantheon of kaiju movies, this one is eclipsed only by two other movies in the entire genre. And that's the original King Kong and the original Godzilla. And the only reason they edge out is because this movie wouldn't exist without either one of them.
That's fair.
That is the only reason, because those two created the genre and they paved the way for the effects, and they because they did everything first. That is the only reason they edge out.
I think there's two that edge it out for me, but it's not like by a giant margin or anything. Like, it's close. It is the original Godzilla, but I also hold Shin Godzilla in incredibly high regard. And we can agree to disagree on
actually,
that.
I love Shin Godzilla. I'm one of those. Cool. I'm one of those people.
I love it. I love it so much. It's one of the best movies I've seen in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But the Tokyo destruction scene in that is like this, where it's so tragic because you know what's happening. You know, like, people are dying. But it's also just, it's so well put together.
Yeah.
Everything's firing on all cylinders. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that happens in so much of Revenge of Iris.
Yeah.
So
and the thing that is actually a little bit disconcerting, and we had tastes of this in the previous two movies, but it gets cranked up to 11 in this. This movie does not shy away from showing you collateral damage.
No, well,
because that was the thing. Most kaiju movies kind of have sanitized violence. You see buildings be destroyed. You see military vehicles be destroyed. But that's all you really see. Now, sometimes they say the city's evacuated, so you can revel in the buildings being destroyed without feeling bad about it. But the military vehicles are a little harder to deal with. This doesn't shy away from this. Gamera's technically trying to be the good guy here. But even Gamera is causing collateral damage. You see people on the street. The street's full of people, and they are dying. They are getting hit by debris. They are getting incinerated by fire. It does not shy away from it. And it's kind of off-putting because... you would think this is the action sequence. I should be enjoying this. You feel kind of bad if you find yourself enjoying this. You're also thinking, wait a minute, Gamera's the good guy. He's technically killing people.
Well, that was the thing when I first saw this, because a lot of this happens in the first 10 minutes. It's dark. It's night. It's so moody. This movie has such an atmosphere. But even within that, where it's Gamera's trying to get a Gauss, there's those couple things where you're like, oh crap, we're in for something different. Even still, not taking anything away from the preceding two, but this is just even a further step up where, people are dying. They're burning to death. They're taking the time and the moment to point out that people are dying and having people react to that. And clearly showing them as collateral damage. But even still, even that there's been gore in this franchise before, when Gamera gets a Gauss, you're in for something different when its head and then eyeball explodes.
Oh, I was about to say, even what happens to Gauss it's off-putting. It's I know. Yeah. We know the Gauss are nasty. They eat people and they don't care. Yeah. They are mean and they are disgusting. I mean, even the original Gauss from the 60s was essentially a vampire bat. It drank blood. Yeah. I mean, it was not to be sympathized with. And you still don't really sympathize with. But even at this point, we're just like, oh, that's what Gamera is doing to these. Oh, man. There's there's a tiny, tiny bit of sympathy to be had because you're seeing what is actually happening. It's not sanitized. It is not sanitized at all.
For any of our listeners who might be Marvel movie fans, I think you could liken it to Wolverine in any of the X-Men movies or his first two solo movies in comparison to Wolverine in Logan.
Oh my.
Where it's now you're seeing what in Logan, it's like, oh yeah, this is horrifying because it's indestructible knife claws.
Yeah.
That's what they would do.
Yeah.
So In Gamera, it's like the fire, the heat, everything. You're just like, oh my gosh. But it does add to the story, and it adds to.
I know, and
themes.
That's the brilliance of it. This is not here for shock value. It is not.
No.
It is. There is purpose to this, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much, because we see this perspective. We have the spectacle of all of this, but we're seeing all of this through the eyes of one character. One person who suffered because of this collateral damage, Ayana.
Yep.
And the opening, we've already hinted at it a little bit, Nightmare Gamera, that we see very briefly at the beginning of the movie and then a couple of other times later throughout the film. What's fascinating about that is the whole point of this. It goes back to Guardian of the Universe. This girl, she's a teenage girl. She is essentially a dark version of Asagi.
Yes.
She's a dark Asagi. That's what she is. Complete with all the trappings. She gets her own Magatama bead, but her Magatama bead looks like a talon. It looks like a claw. You know, it's bigger and it's sharp and it's angular and, you know, it's not curved and smooth like the Asagi's Magatama. And it is her connection to Iris. And the mythology is a little bit weird and muddy a little bit here, but I completely forgive it. But we see this flashback. She was there in the city during the end of Guardian of the Universe. Her parents and her cat, because that's where she gets the name for the monster, her cat Iris, they all died while Gamera was fighting Gauss. They are the collateral damage. They are those empty buildings that we see in these movies. There were people there. There were consequences for it. She watched them die. She survived, but she watched them die. So that Gamera that we see, because we're seeing footage from Guardian of the Universe, and we remember Gamera being the hero. And when we see Nightmare Gamera, that's how, in her mind, that's how she sees Gamera. He is a monster.
Yeah.
He is a demon, even. He is terrifying. He's a killer. And that is how she carries that with her for the whole movie. This is a revenge story, but it's a revenge story this is a revenge story done well. It is done incredibly well, because I just heard something today. I forget if it was on another podcast or something like that. Yeah, it was Kaiju Weekly. They were talking about the Japanese Spider-Man show, and apparently laugh all you want, but the what they brought up was that that Spider-Man was motivated by revenge, because apparently in Japan, revenge isn't necessarily seen as a bad thing. It's a totally legitimate motivation for something. Whereas in the West, we tend to view it much more negatively. And in this is one of those times where it's a revenge story, but it ends like, for us Westerners, more like a traditional revenge story. She goes through all of this and she realizes this was pointless.
Yeah.
She has to come to grips at the end of this movie with what she's done. And, oh, man. So you have this caricature, at the beginning. And, you have a couple of other characters who are borderline caricatures, I have to say. I feel like these actors, they come perilously close to Power Ranger levels of villainy with how ridiculous they get.
Are we talking the cultists?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you know how you said the second one is where you had some character struggles?
Yeah.
This one, especially because of those two, just with not trying to knock the performers, but just how they were doing the performances.
Yeah.
I was like, you're losing me a bit.
Yeah, they get a little crazy.
The strength of the rest of the film.
Yeah, they get a little crazy, but they're saying some interesting things. Quoting the Book of Changes and Confucianism. When heaven and earth face each other, everything is destroyed. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's just, woo,
what you're saying is interesting. Just say it different.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds very, very intense.
Yeah.
And they, like I said, they get a little nuts. They come, like I said, perilously close to Power Ranger levels of villainy. They're almost caricatures. I don't think they quite get there, but they come right up to the fence. They come right up to the fence and kind of like reach over the fence a little bit.
Yeah.
Into caricature land.
Stands out. It just stands out so much in comparison to everybody else in the movie, where you can watch giant kaiju movies and other things where it's like, this person's treating it super seriously, and then this person knows exactly the movie they're in, and you wish everybody was doing what that person was doing. This is the reverse of that. Everybody else knew the movie they were in, and these guys maybe thought they were in a quasi-Showa era Gamera.
Yeah.
Not to be that mean, but it's
it's just so much. Just everything just comes to a head in this. Asagi comes back.
Oh my gosh!
And she's not quite the star in this one, but she comes back and she is still advocating for Gamera, because at this point, if anyone has concerns about Gamera, I think it's actually totally understandable, because he at first really seems to not care about the collateral damage that he's causing, and by the end of the movie. I think that concern comes back. It definitely comes back. What am I talking about? He becomes more heroic as time goes on. I love this movie so much.
Oh, I know.
You get to that like the dream sequence at the end, because what ends up happening, this is so fascinating, because Iris is supposed to be some sort of spawn of the Gauss. So Iris is angry at Gamera because Iris sees Gamera as the killer of her family, or his family. I don't know, but I'll say his just for the sake of it. Iris sees Gamera as the killer of his family, and he bonds with Ayane because of that, because they both have this kinship in their hatred of Gamera. But it seems like, honestly, as time goes on, that Iris is just trying to use her. By absorbing her, and then it seems like, especially when you get to the end, it really seems like he was just using her because, he absorbs her, and then he goes off and he kills a bunch of other people, and then she relives that at the end in her little dream sequence. She even asks herself, did I kill those people? Because she didn't. I don't think she meant to kill people. She just wanted to kill Gamera, and it's this wonderful visual metaphor for the all-consuming nature of revenge. Heck, you could, if you want to get super spiritual about it, it's kind of the all-consuming nature of sin, because that's really what happens. You indulge it a little bit, and it continues to consume. Yeah, it continues to consume, and then all it does is use you. Because that's all the Iris does at the end. He doesn't care. He just wants to use her.
Her hate fueled Iris, so Iris, like, hey, we got this common enemy, but I can help. And as you see, I'm even though you just said the character's name, I'm just totally brain farting on her name. Ayana, sorry. Yeah, as you see Ayana, at first it's a mutual relationship, and she's taking care of Iris, but then Iris is feeding on her hate, then legitimately trying to feed on her, but then as Iris grows in power and the hatred is
and turns into a Final Fantasy boss.
Yeah. But then you also get, like, towards the end, she's looking rough, she's looking pale, she's looking weak, she is like, she's just living in this,
she's cold,
this sin, this anger. She's cold. She's, it's so friggin' rich.
Yeah, and the thing is the performance is incredibly subtle. She's not raging. She seethes. She glares. Yeah. She just looks on, but exactly what's going on in her head. That actress was brilliant. absolutely
Oh my
brilliant.
goodness, yeah.
And people try to talk to her. Like Asagi goes to her and tries to say, "Stop it. Stop it. What are you doing? Stop it."
Yeah.
She can't get through to her. And then I love the scene at the end. It is so brilliant. It is so absolutely brilliant because you have this boy who's in charge of the shrine. His family is in charge of the shrine where they find Iris. And I have notes here about Torii Gates, but we can skip over it for the sake of time because I could go on about Torii Gates because they're incredibly significant. But let's stay focused on this. And he's given some sort of ancient ceremonial weapon. It's been passed down to the family. It's a knife. And he's told, you can use this to save Ayana. So he thinks he can use it somehow to kill Iris. Iris is a freaking giant monster. I mean, what's it going to do? And if this had been any other movie, when you get to the end, because the fantastic climax at the train station, if this had been any other movie, you get to the end there and he unwraps the knife and he takes it and he throws it at Iris after we've already had the setup that the knife can do something to help. If this had been any other movie, that would have turned into some giant flaming dart or something.
Yeah.
And just, an arrow just going right through Iris and, I don't know, weakened him enough that Gamera could come in and finish him off. No. It doesn't do that. It goes much deeper than that. The dagger flies at Iris. It bounces right off. It does nothing. But then it falls down toward Ayana, and as it comes down, it scratches her cheek. Just a tiny bit. Just scratches it as it falls and it hits the ground. But it was just enough to break her out of her little trance with Iris, because at that point, Iris is leaning in, fully intent on completely absorbing her.
Yeah.
And it breaks that power just a tiny bit. She comes to her senses for a split second. And then it's too late. And then Iris grabs her and sucks her right in. And then she has her little dream sequence where she's forced to confront her own sins at that point. It is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. And then what happens after that? Gamera goes over there and he plays hero. He stabs his hand right into Iris's chest and he pulls her right out. He's like, no, you can't have her. And he just yanks her right out.
Wonderfully brutal.
Yeah. And then it goes a step further. And if you want to talk about Christological parallels, Gamera's got Ayana in his one hand, in his left hand.
Yep.
And then Iris
the right hand
stabs Gamera through his right hand to the wall.
Yep.
Through the palm, I might add, because he has spiky things on him. Through the hand. I'm like, well.
Yeah.
You could read into that really hard.
Oh, absolutely.
And then oh my gosh, and I will never forget the first time I watched this movie and I saw this happen, because and the suit acting is brilliant with this. Absolutely brilliant, because Gamera is looking at his hand and he's looking back at Iris and he's like, crap, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? There's only one thing I can do. And I'm going to have to do it. And he blows his own hand off with his plasma ball fire breath.
Love it.
He blows off his own hand, and then Iris tries to shoot him, and because he's Gamera and he can do this, he takes that stub and he absorbs the hand and then shoots it right back like Yoda in episode 2 with force lightning, and nukes the snot out of Iris.
So good.
Oh, there are few scenes in movies that are the textbook definition of BA. That is one of them.
I was texting some friends. They're like, so what are you guys up to? And then I'm giving them the play-by-play of this. I'm watching this, and I did not know how much I needed this. This is amazing.
Oh, man. And then after that, You have these scenes where Gamera is interacting with our human characters. He's giving Ayana back, and she's covered in iris guts, and he's being as gentle as possible, putting her down, and the characters are looking up at him, and they're talking to him, and he's standing there observing everything. I mean, I will tell you, the first time I watched this movie, I was so totally in it. I was just immersed. I was like, I am in with everything, because that's how good this movie is. Oh, then these characters prove that they failed elementary biology class because they are doing CPR in the wrong part of the body. That is not where your heart is. You are trying to give this girl a stomach pump. That is how, that should tell you something. It takes, this is a unique kind of immersion. I am completely immersed in this, and then it takes one small stupid thing to completely shatter it. As I've taken CPR classes, and they are doing it 100% wrong. It's like, congratulations, movie. You had me so immersed that it took one stupid thing. One nitpick detail to take me right out of it. But, then Gamera is just standing there, and he's watching, and he's making sure everything is okay. Ayana even looks up to him and more or less says, "You saved me." The thing that she had spent this entire movie dedicated to killing and murdering saves her.
Yeah.
At great cost, I might add.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to become more of a Christ figure than that. Let's be honest.
Well, no, exactly. And for me, my read-in of that is Gamera knew that she felt this way, and he still sacrificed for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will ask this one quick thing, because I know it's a little bit of a debate in the kaiju community. How do you feel about the ending? I think the ending is perfect, but apparently there are people who have issues with it. And I'm talking about the final scene when Gamera just wanders out to the city, and it's implied he's going to confront the swarm of Gauss that are coming.
I loved it. Of course, I wanted more, because when the product is that good, like, just keep it coming. But at the same point, you didn't need it. You didn't need to show it. What else could it have done that we didn't already get? We just had this huge emotional and action climax that sealed the movie and followed through on the other themes from the previous two, that anything else, like, you didn't need to show the battle. You didn't need to know, like, who won that. Because the point, to me, it's like Gamera's going to do whatever he needs to do to save. And even though Gamera looks like Nightmare Gamera, he just showed he's still like Gamera from Guardian, where he cares. And I'm like, that's a great way to end it. It's an interesting spot, because you could be like, I've seen some people try to say it's a cliffhanger. I wouldn't say so, but I do understand that viewpoint. But I'm like, you can't not end it there, because they've been building up to the Gauss flying in, but you don't need to then show, because at that point it's like, all right, now we're just smorgasbording.
Yeah.
And you got the punch that you got so much in the finale that I'm like, that's a great spot to end it.
Yeah.
Like, what else is there, really? Mm-hmm. And I actually, before we did this, I watched a series on YouTube I can't remember the channel, but it was like 4 fun facts from each of these movies. And for Iris, they were like, they had no plan for Gamera 4. The team had a vision for the increase in scope for each movie, and they're like, we just wanted to end it there, because at this point, Iris is a world threat. And then to do the Gauss stuff, it's like, at some point, we're either scaling down or we're losing some of the magic. So ending it there, I'm like, I agreed 100%. So I loved it.
Okay, Jimmy, that's a good point. As Jimmy just pointed out, there actually kind of is a sequel. There is a Gamera 4. Yes. It's a fan film that will never see the light of day ever again. But it's called Gamera for Truth.
Yes.
Made by a director named Shinpei Hayashiya, who has now gone on to make a trilogy of his of independent original kaiju movies. You might be familiar with Reigo was the first one that just got brought over here.
Oh, I haven't. No.
Yeah. Wander around Walmart, you might be able to find it. That or this, or the first sequel, which is Reiga or Raiga. Oh. I've seen the first one. It's interesting, but no, he was one of those guys who was not happy with the ending, so he wanted to make another one. So he made a Gamera 4 that the studio apparently thought, this is really good, but we're burying it.
Well, it's studios have interesting relationships with fan films, right?
Yeah, you just did an episode about Star Wars fan films, so yes.
Yep. Well, you're into Star Trek, I believe.
Yes.
Did you ever see Prelude to Axanar?
Yes, but it was a while ago. I also saw Star Trek Continues, which was fantastic.
With Axanar, it got so much attention, and because of I have no doubt because of the quality of it, but then also because of how they were doing the funding for it, that got legal questions. But Paramount took a lot of issue with it, and that's the thing when you get fan stuff that whether or not it's about the profit, but if it's, I'm not saying that this fourth film would have shown up any of the first three, but if it shows how good it is, and they're like, wait, we're not doing this. We can't have this exist. Like we can't let this get out because it shows us up.
Yeah.
Or if we make a next one that doesn't live up to this fan film, that doesn't even have a fraction of our fractional budget, like
I don't know. I've read a plot synopsis of it. I've read some descriptions of it. It's essentially Gamera fighting the Horde of Gauss.
Yeah.
From what I understand. But I think it's only like
albino Gauss.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's like 25, 30 minutes long. So
I think so. I'm curious to see it, but I know it'll never see the light of day. It did get shown at two festivals, and I think the director, in one of the videos that I was watching, because it talked about it, the director did see it, and he was like, "Yeah, it's good." Like,
yeah, Kaneko. Yeah, he said, he said, "I have the ending for the movie that I wanted."
Yeah,
but this is good. So I think he was trying to make a compromise. Like, wow, I made the ending.
Oh yeah,
this is the ending, but this is good. So
yeah, and that's it. It ends so well. Before we wrap this up, I gotta ask you, just because we've talked about other Gamera stuff.
Yeah.
There's two things I would love to see. One is did you see the treatment trailer from 2015 involving Gamera?
Yes.
What did you think of it?
It looked good. I think it had potential. I want to see something happen with Gamera. I really do.
Yeah.
Poor Gamera deserves to have another movie. He's a little sad right now because he's like, everybody else is getting new movies. Why don't I get a new movie? Come on. I haven't had a movie in 14 years. I want a movie, dang it. I mean, even Rodan gets to have a new movie. He hasn't been in a movie since 2005, and he gets to be super cool and king of the monsters. Oh, yeah, he's a little perturbed. Yeah, I can tell.
I can. Well, especially after watching his amazing trilogy, I'm like, why aren't there more of you? All right, so that the other question is, hypothetically, if we could ever get it, how on board would you be with a Gamera Godzilla flick?
A 3,000%? I want to see that.
Oh my gosh, man!
I want to see that. After having a rematch with Kong, I mean, at this point, the two of them are not talking to each other. They've got differences. And with the Orca, Jimmy's still trying to fix the dang Orca, but the parts aren't coming in until November. We're trying to get the Orca fixed so they can get along again. But aside from the rematch with Kong, Gamera's the next one. Gamera won't have the pull that Godzilla or Kong do in the United States, but there really isn't any other kaiju on the same level of icon anywhere close besides those two. And it's just, what else do you do at that point? So I would be totally on board for it. I know that idea has been floated around to Toho, but they've never pulled the trigger on it. And I would be all for it. How would you end it? Yeah. I don't know. How would you go about it? I really don't know. Same thing with Godzilla versus Kong. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you do it right with two such important monsters. The closest I've seen to it is the series Death Battle had an episode that was Godzilla and Gamera. And I have a Japanese listener who takes umbrage with that show because she argues that their research is wrong because they have Godzilla win, and she argues wouldn't go like that, but I think she's firmly in the Gamera camp. I get the impression. Right. So
that episode has that line where they're summing up like Godzilla, how he gets the spiral ray is just, I love it so much, and I've even talked about it on the show. I think it represents like people from outside the kaiju fandom when they sit in and they're just like, what? Where after absorbing the soul of a dead pterodactyl, okay. Like,
this is a thing.
We're on board.
The Heisei movies were a little weird.
We're just like, yep, nope, this tracks. This makes sense. And it's like, what did I just what?
when you put it that way,
so good. It's so good. Yeah, man, I would love a Gamera Godzilla movie, be it in the MonsterVerse, or if they could somehow include Gamera in the MonsterVerse.
Gamera in the MonsterVerse would be interesting. I've heard rumors that he might show up in the MonsterVerse. I don't know if I want Gamera in the MonsterVerse, but it would be interesting.
Well, with the MonsterVerse, potentially, the thing is, I didn't know if it would end after Kong, and I still hope it doesn't, just because it's the only other franchise that's doing the shared universe well.
As I have stated several times on my show, the MonsterVerse is the only remotely successful shared cinematic universe right now. The only other one.
Yep. Nope. Nothing else is working.
DC tried, but now they're kind of ignoring it. And we won't talk about Dark Universe. That was DOA.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But with just with how it's going, if it's going to keep going, I think they're going to need something else. Because even though guys like you and I and a big fandom will show up for Godzilla, I still think they're going to need to start injecting more and doing more, because I might be in the minority, maybe. I don't know. I loved King of the Monsters.
I did too. So if it's a minority, we're both in it.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I do. I both get and also don't get the flack that movie gets, because it's not it's not one of the heavier Godzilla movies. And when someone asks like, "What's Godzilla?" It's not just a heavy meditation on the horrors of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It is also a franchise where a giant man in a lizard suit dances and does a 2-mile-long tail sliding dropkick. There's room for everything in it. So
and also flies.
When someone's like, exactly, uses his breath to fly after he tucks his tail up. Like, when people are I get wanting more human characters, but at the same point, I'm like, look, man, this is a monster romp. This is what we're down for. And it does it better than Final Wars does. I've been waiting for Gamera with a giant budget behind him, and I'm getting it. Do not ruin this for me. And I love that with Gamera. I think Gamera, especially because he doesn't have the American audience base, then there could be more intrigue. Because with Godzilla, because he's got that reputation, and he's still working on like losing that stigma from the dubbed versions that came to North America, that Gamera, you could go Heisei on it, or Heisei right away, and people might get on board with it. So I'd love that.
Yeah, I think it's actually would be harder for Gamera because for a lot of Americans, their first exposure to Gamera, particularly people our age, was Mr. Science Theater, where Gamera was a joke.
Right.
And unfortunately, the Sandy Frank dubs for those movies didn't do him any favors.
Yeah.
It just made it even easier for them to be mocked. So I think Gamera probably has a bigger stigma to get over than Godzilla does. You know, Godzilla has the advantage of looking like a dinosaur. You know, this is a giant turtle with a giant saber-toothed turtle. I mean, that's a little bit of a harder pill to swallow. And then, I mean, Gamera tried out for the Olympics in one movie. I mean, need I say more? You know, he was a gymnast for a hot minute. And, you know, when you have stuff like that and it just all of the other absurdities and then the goofy kid characters, there's just so much baggage that Gamera has.
That's fair.
You know, I think for a lot of American audiences, it's harder to get over that. Where Godzilla doesn't have as much, not nearly.
That's fair. I think I guess part of my thought is as well, like with Gamera having less of that audience, it's like, okay, you've got the memes and the gifs and the joke piece, but it's also the wider audience isn't even aware of that version of it. But then in my head, I'm just picturing it, in Legion, we got that outstanding scene where Gamera got the hero fly-in sequence.
Yes.
And then in Iris, you got an in-air battle. I'd honestly say if you could do that well, and not that they didn't, because like I said, I marked the heck out when he flew in Legion with the wing flippers.
He was a superhero for a second there. I mean, he really was.
You toss that on the big screen now, I think the audience would cheer. They'd go for it. It might not be a huge $1 billion maker, but it doesn't have to be. But that's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
I also want more of this now that I've had it and I've enjoyed it. I'm like, okay, give me more. And I don't want to have to jump back to the junk food to get it. I want more of this amazing steak.
Well, the nice thing about Godzilla is there's a flavor of Godzilla for everybody. You can have a dark Godzilla. You can have a light Godzilla. I think you can do the same thing with Gamera, but it has to be done right. You can
have a Kentucky Fried Godzilla that nobody asked for.
Yes, but it needs to be done right. And I think that's what Gamera... If you watch Gamera the Brave, I think that it proves that you can do a lighter Gamera movie that is like the old Showa movies, but you can do it right. And you can make it endearing and you can make it charming and it can still work. You just have to write a child like a child, like a real child, and not some precocious girl and boy who knows more than the adults. And
the adults don't have to be idiots for the kids to work.
Yeah. You can do it right. And I think that's we just need the right filmmaker to do it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I feel the same way about King Kong. I think King Kong's might actually be in a more of a rut. It's hard to break Kong out of the mold of that original movie because the original movie is just, it's one of the few potential examples of cinematic perfection. I mean, because that original movie is just so good, it's hard to break out of it. And
with all due respect to Peter Jackson's Kong, it's why I even prefer Skull Island, because Skull Island was finally the one where I'm like, we're doing something different here.
It's not the first time. It's just the other times had mixed results.
All right. It's the first time that we're doing it well.
Yeah. I mean, King Kong Escapes is fun. It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily a great movie, but it's definitely fun.
Yeah.
And King Kong Lives was daringly different, but it was poorly executed. Oh my goodness.
All right, so I got to get run into the boat soon. Carl's like, yo, I finished the episode. And I'm done crying, and I need to digest this and talk. So before I get running, where can the listeners on my side find you, my good sir? You're on the socials. You're also on the Patreon.
Yes.
So can you let me know where I can get those? And we can also put those in our show notes.
Oh, excellent. But yes, you can follow the podcast on all of the social medias. Well, a lot of them. Twitter, our handle is the Monster Isla 1, and due to contractual obligations, I must also tell you to follow Jimmy at NASA Jimmy. And you can find us on Facebook at Monster Island Film Vault, and we are Monster Island Film Vault on the Instagram. And yes, we are on Patreon as well. I think you should be able to find it by searching Monster Island Film Vault. I am also, as I've hinted at a few times throughout this very epic episode that you're going to have, I am also a writer and an author as well as a podcaster. The podcast website is monsterislandfilmvault.com, by the way. And my author website is nathanjsmarchand.com. Yes, I have two middle initials, and I had to use them for my website because nathanmarchand.com was already taken. I'm going to find that guy. And you can follow my author Twitter, if you want to call it that, at nathanmarchand7. And I have my professional page on Facebook is The Worlds of Nathan Marchand. I think that's everything.
Awesome, man. And listener, you can also find Nathan's books on Amazon. They are on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. I am going to be picking up some when I can. I'm looking forward to it. And I highly
let me know
recommend
which ones you want.
show.
I might have copies I can send you, and they will be signed.
Ooh, I'm gonna take you up on that. Like I said, it's when I have money. But I'll definitely message you, man. All right, so all that being said, dear listener, I highly recommend check out the Monster Island Film Vault. The episodes are always good, always entertaining. If you want some fun interaction about Wu-Tang Clan, Jimmy on Twitter is hilarious. We got into a fun talk about Wu-Tang just the other week, and there's so much good stuff here. So I highly recommend the show. Nathan, thank you so much for having me on the island, man.
Hey, you are always welcome to come back.
Oh, you will rue that invitation, sir, because I'm definitely coming back, and we are doing this again.
I think Jimmy is thinking those are fighting words. So.
Oh, Jimmy, if you want to go, sir, about the prequels, I will bring the poutine. I will bring the John Williams. Wait,
what? The heck, Jimmy? You have your old laser pistol in the drawer in the producer? Dude, put it down, okay? Put it down.
We will discuss this like civil gentlemen, Jimmy. I said Tom Cruise could play you. Chris Farley, if he were alive, would play me. There's no comparison here. This is pure verbal.
Apparently, you win this round.
Yes. All right. Well, I am, sir. I've got to catch my boat back to the mainland. I will say hello to Carl Serizawa for you, and I'll try to find out.
Yeah, I'd like to know the family relations here. I'm curious.
I will definitely try to scope that out.
I mean, we have we have a Dr. Serizawa Memorial Park here. I mean, actually, no, it's a Memorial Garden. Excuse me. We have it's an Ashiro Honda Park. We have a Dr. Serizawa Memorial Garden here. So
I'll definitely I'll try to get it out. He'll be emotional from Clone Wars, so he might be more open to heavy talks. I know I was. All right, I got a jet. Thank you for having me. Can't wait to come back. And dear listener, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of One Cross Radio. Make sure you check out all of Nathan's socials. Check out his books. Check out the Monster Island Film Vault. I cannot recommend it enough. All that being said, hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. God bless, my friends. Nathan, thank you. Jimmy, we will chat soon, buddy. Have a good one, guys. Take care.